workshop is going to be discussing those defending U.S. civil liberties, and they will also examine specific cases where activists have been incarcerated or facing persecution because of their work, such as the Holy Land 5, Rasmea Odeh, which most of us are going to hear about from her most recent events, and the detained American hunger striker Mohamed Soltan. In the face of criminalization of Palestine solidarity work, what can we do to protect ourselves and to help those who have been wrongly accused? So first up, we have Rafeeq Jabir. Rafeeq Jabir has actually been a big part of AMP for as long as I can remember, years and years ago. He's a longtime activist and a well-respected leader in the Muslim community. He was also formerly the regional director of the Greater Chicago area for the Muslim Legal Fund of America. Mr. Jabir is a co-founder of the Council of American Islamic Relations, CARE, the Chicago Center for Muslim Civil Rights, the United Muslims American Association, and of a post-9/11 Muslim-Christian dialogue group. He also currently sits on the board of the Spartan Educational Foundation in Oak Lawn, Illinois. Mr. Jabir is the proprietor of Jabir Financial Services. He was also the president of the board of directors of the Mosque Foundation located in Bridgeview, Illinois, as well as a member of the board for several years. Mr. Jabir also is national president of the Islamic Association of Palestine. So if you can all have a warm welcome for Mr. Jabir.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. Thank you, Deena, for this long introduction. It did more than my speech altogether. We'll talk about when we talk about fear and what's the difference in fear, what's in difference in cowardice. Fear is something. It's okay. Everybody has some fears because that when we were born, that's Allah Subhanahu wa Taala created us. That we fear and we are afraid sometimes of certain things, and this is a good, positive emotion that we have. But when fear becomes as a cowardice, which is in Arabic like there's a khawf and there's a jub, and there's for those, that's the big difference. And if you want to work, especially for a cause like Palestine, if you're coming in afraid, then don't come in, because especially the cause of Palestine or anything goes around that and the civil liberties, that is going to be a topic. Because we have people out there that would not allow you to do anything, would not allow you to do any activism for this cause. I will give you some examples what fears means and what the difference between fears and cowardice. Fear that you worry about something, yes, and be cautious, that's okay. But to become to the point where you become coward, that's where you cross the line. And I'll give you some examples of that because of the short time we have here. That a lot of you probably know Mohamed Soltan. Mohamed Soltan, who was put in jail in Israel unjustly, and for the only reason because he tried to help the poor and the needy and those who are, and people, they got afraid when he came back. This is the truth. That's what we call now cowardice. Some people will not even shake hands with him, and when he comes out from the mosque and for prayer, he goes somewhere. The people, they try to do everything to avoid to have to meet with him, and they did that to me too. A lot of people after that, even I was part of the Mosque Foundation for a long time. When they heard about that, I was taken on his case at that time, and people avoided to say hello to me. I mean, I see it. I mean, I see them coming out. When they see me coming out, they go to different. That's cowardice. So if you want to be a coward, then don't come in to start from the beginning. But fear, it's okay. It's a positive emotional. I'll give you something what it means also. Even this is in the Quran, it says, because in the Quran it says, it says that the people told them that the people have gathered against you. قالوا لهم الناس قد جمعوا لكم الناس فاخشوهم. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala حق أن تخشوا. That's what the Quran says. The people tells you, be afraid and be cowards for those people because they gathered against you. But the one that you, the one you really have to fear is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As Muslims, that's how we should feel. I mean, the only thing we have to fear is Allah, and our lives, our livelihoods, everything in the hands of the Lord. If we don't have that, belief, there is a problem with our beliefs then. We have to really look into the mirror and find out really where we stand with our beliefs in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and our faith. Because nobody can, and there's a very famous hadith, which is an Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, that he said, that which is known, I just tried to shorten it as much as possible. But when he was asked about, the Prophet ﷺ, he told him, the Prophet says, do you want me to, he was a young child, he was a young boy actually, and the Prophet told him, do you want me to teach you something? He says, yes, Prophet. He says, okay, I want you to know that if the whole world gathered to do something wrong to you, that Allah will not permit, that will not touch you, and will miss you. It will not happen. And remember, if the whole world tried to do something good for you, that's not going to happen unless Allah permits it. So if you remember, especially the youth here, remember that kind of this is the Prophet's hadith, and it's a very, very, authentic hadith in Muslim and al-Bukhari, and it's very well known in that. We have to believe in that nothing will happen to you, and don't worry about it. If anything is going to happen to you, it's going to happen to you. If it's not going to happen to you, it's not going to happen to you. Which is the destiny, but I don't want you to misunderstand the destiny altogether. But this is that you have to keep that when you're doing with the cause. The cause is very tough cause. This Palestine is the toughest cause problem in the world because it's easier to deal with other causes. It's easier to deal with hunger, easier to deal with relief. But when it comes to Palestine, the Zionist movement is always ready, 24 hours awake to fight you back. And the first thing they want to do is instill fear in you. And that's how they do it. Because whenever they do, they did that to me when I was living under the occupation. Every time they tried to instill fear. That's how they do that. They bring you in, interrogate you, and then let you go. Yeah, they put some people in jail, and some people they beat up, and so forth. All these kind of things just to put fear in you, which is that culminates actually in the case of Rasmea here. They will talk about it, inshallah. But fear, it's that if you know this is your enemy, you have to know who's your enemy. If you don't know who's your adversary and your enemy, then there is a problem, inshallah. So be careful, work, but remember that, of course, that doesn't mean don't go like a wild person and a wild man that breaking the laws and doing all these stupid things. No, be careful, do the right things, don't break the laws. But at the same time, don't be afraid. Even, which is I want to conclude with this, even if the FBI or any security forces or something stopped you, don't be afraid to tell them, I will not talk to you, this is your right. I will not talk to you without the presence of my lawyer. They tell you whatever, they try to also instill fear in you. So why you're afraid? Do you have something to hide? Tell them, don't say yes or no, I don't have any. Just tell them, I will not talk to you without the presence of my lawyer. I want to call my lawyer, we'll sit down and talk. They will come again and say, well, we want just a couple of minutes, don't worry about it, we're not going to harm you. We don't want you. Tell them, I don't want to talk to you unless my lawyer is present. That's what you need. Don't be afraid to tell them that, because many, many people actually, they lost and they are in jail unjustly because they were stupid enough to say this, I'm sorry to say that. They will not say, well, I have nothing to fear, so this I would not, I'll talk to them. No, don't talk. That's my advice to you. I think you can ask the lawyer when he comes in here, Mike Deutsch, he will emphasize this and the civil rights in care and MLFA. We always say that, don't talk without your lawyer. That's not fear. That's actually courage, and you have to keep that courage, and I hope everything will be all right, inshallah, for after all this. Jazakumullah khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallahu khairan for that. Next up, we have Hatem Abudayyeh. Hatem Abudayyeh is the executive director of AAAN, Arab American Action Network, which is a grassroots organization that strives to strengthen the Arab community in the Chicagoland area. Mr. Abudayyeh is also actively involved with the U.S. PCN, U.S. Palestine Community Network. He's also led the nationwide defense committee seeking justice for Palestinian American activist Rasmea Odeh. So if you can all join together for a warm welcome for Hatem.
So my daughter told me that I spoke too long earlier in my first session, so I'm going to cut it short already. Before I start, and I'm just going to give a little snapshot of the case of my colleague, our sister Rasmea Odeh, because her esteemed attorney's here, and he'll talk more specifically about it. I also want to tell people that this is just a snapshot, even from him, in this session. And International A, which is on this level as well, at 5:30 is going to be a workshop where we'll talk more specifically about the case. We'll talk about the organizing around the case, and we'll talk about what we still need to do to help get Rasmea out of prison. So, activism without fear. You know, that's the title of this session. Rafeeq just talked about what that means on some level, and I think, you know, we see what that has meant in this country historically. We never talk about Rasmea and her case in a vacuum. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to talk about it in the context of two other historical moments. One is the historical moment in which the repression of the Black liberation movement in this country and other national liberation movements in this country. And then the one is this historical moment, post-September 11th, but really most specifically attacks on Palestine support work. Because when it comes down to it, Rasmea is an Arab woman, she is a Muslim woman, she is a Palestinian, but she has come under attack and she is in jail right now because she is Palestinian and because she is an icon and a legend in the Palestine support movement and the national liberation movement over decades. That's what it comes down to. For us in this room, it's most important to understand it in that context. There is Islamophobia in this country, of course. We are attacked because we are Muslims, because there are racist right-wingers in the Tea Party and in other elements of the Republican Party and other sectors of this society. Yes, that's acknowledged. There's been studies done about that. The folks at AFP have done some work on that. It's totally acknowledged. But the attacks on Rasmea, the attacks on Mohamed Soltan and Abd al-Halim al-Ashqar, the attack on the Professor Sami Aryan, the attack on the Holy Land Foundation 5, those were all attacks on people who are Palestinian and who are doing work to liberate their homeland. Liberating their homeland from the United States means political advocacy, means trying to change hearts and minds, means talking to campuses and schools and synagogues and churches and mosques and in the neighborhoods and legislators and organizing protests and organizing letter writing campaigns. That's what organizing in this country for Palestinian rights is. The organizing in Palestine is different, of course. The organizing in Europe is different. But we are all part of an indivisible nation of Palestine, the Palestinians amongst us. And so we have a specific role and responsibility here. And it's most important, I believe, to look at the case of Rasmea in the context of our Palestine support work. You know, yes, there's an immigration element to it, but from day one, we were calling that immigration charge a pretext. From day one, we said this is not about an application that she may have filled out incorrectly or inaccurately. That's not what this was about. That application was filled out 20 years ago. She had been a citizen already for 10 years. What it's about is victories for our movement, Palestine support movement in this country. Victories in this country, victories in Palestine itself. We called the attack on Gaza and the self-defense and the resistance against the Israeli attack on Gaza a victory, even though we lost over 2,000 of our precious men, women, and children. But we called it a victory because it was a military victory for the Palestinians, and it was a political victory for the Palestinians, and it was a public relations victory across the world for the Palestinians. More and more, day after day, Israel is being seen as the criminal, racist, apartheid state that it is. And it's because of the work of people in this room, and the students all across this country, and organizers like Rasmea and Mohamed Salah and Abdul Halim al-Ashqar and Sami Aryan and everybody else who has come up against the long arm of the law in this country. So make no mistake, they've come up against the long arm of the law because they're Palestinian, because they do Palestine support work, and because we're winning. We are winning the hearts and minds, even in this country, beginning to win the hearts and minds of the people in this country. The Presbyterians voted for divestment after 10 years of an important struggle in that church. At DePaul, there was a student referendum that voted for divestment on their campus, and there might be DePaul students here that we should congratulate for that. SodaStream has decided that they're shutting down one of their factories in the occupied territories because of organizing to boycott SodaStream. The cultural boycott and the academic boycott has led to victories, and mainstream musicians and academicians like Stephen Hawking and Roger Waters and others have decided they're not going to perform in Israel, and they're not going to participate in any academic conferences in Israel. And that's what this case of Rasmea is about. Again, the specifics of the legal ins and outs and what's happening currently with her in jail and us trying to get her out and moving towards an appeal. Michael will talk more about, and we'll talk more about in specifics in the workshop in International A at 5:30. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Hatem. Actually, I am a student at DePaul, and I will tell you that this year was one of the best years for the referendum that was passed. It's actually always brought up in some of our classrooms, especially in our humanities classes, so thank you for that. Congratulations. Next up, we have Michael Deutsch. Since 1970, attorney Michael Deutsch has worked in the Chicago-based People's Law Office, which has been fighting for civil rights of victims of police brutality, wrongful convictions, false arrest, and other government abuses for more than 40 years. His advocacy has taken him all the way around the world, including to hearings in the United Nations. He has tried many civil and criminal cases in federal and state courts, and has written and argued numerous appeals, including several in the U.S. Supreme Court. Mr. Deutsch worked tirelessly to successfully defend Mohamed Soltan, and now he is fighting for justice for the beloved community activist Rasmea Odeh, as Hatem mentioned before, who was this month wrongfully convicted and found guilty of unlawful procurement of naturalization in a politically motivated trial devoid of any due process. So if we can all warmly welcome Michael Deutsch. Thank you.
I've had the great privilege of representing Mohamed Soltan and Rasmea Odeh in the federal courts against the U.S. government. And many people don't know this, but Mohamed Soltan was arrested in Israel and tortured by the secret police, the Shin Bet, and spent 5 years in prison in Israel. And then he was released by the Israeli government, and he came back to Chicago. When he returned to Chicago, there was a great deal of people who came to greet him at the airport, his family and his supporters. Among those people was an informant placed there by the FBI in order to spy on Mohamed Soltan when he came back to the United States. And this informant spied on him for years and wrote fantastic, unbelievable, untrue reports about what Mohamed Soltan was doing once he came back to the United States. And that was one of the bases where the government indicted him in the U.S. in Chicago and said he was a member of a racketeering influenced organization, and he was looking at life imprisonment along with Abdul Halim Ashkar. In Rasmea Odeh's case, a similar thing happened. The AAAN was under investigation. Members were under investigation by the FBI. The FBI had put an informant in people who were doing anti-war work in the Midwest. And they began to spy on members of the AAAN. And as a result of that, the FBI, through the U.S. Attorney's Office, said, well, let's find out about Rasmea Odeh. Let's find out what she's involved in, because she's a naturalized citizen. She wasn't born here. So through their contacts, they contacted the Israeli government, and they found that Rasmea Odeh in 1969 had been arrested, tortured, horrifically tortured for 25 days, and then put on trial by a military court in the occupied territories. And it's known throughout the world that these military courts routinely torture people to get confessions, and the judges are soldiers, the prosecutors are soldiers, and she was convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment, went to prison in Israel for 10 years, and then she was traded for an Israeli soldier along with 69 other Palestinian prisoners. But the reason that they focused on Rasmea Odeh 10 years after she had been a U.S. citizen, living in this country peaceably and working to help her community as part of the AAAN, was because they were spying on the AAAN and spying on people who were doing Palestinian solidarity work in the city of Chicago and throughout the Midwest. And subsequently, after they were looking into Rasmea Odeh, the FBI carried out raids of people's homes. Hatem Abudayyeh was one of the people whose homes was raided. They confiscated all their books and materials. And then they had a grand jury to investigate. 23 people were subpoenaed to that grand jury, and everyone refused to testify. And as of this date, no one has been charged. But the reason that Rasmea Odeh sits in a prison, in a county jail, in a rural area, is because the FBI had targeted the organization that she was the deputy executive director. So we have to understand what is going on with the FBI and the Israeli government and the U.S. government. They are working to try and undercut and disrupt and neutralize Palestine solidarity work in the United States. That is their goal, that is their interest. So we have to be clear that we cannot necessarily go about without protecting our communication, our security, being able to work peaceably, but able to work without the government's eyes and ears. And this is part of a history, because when I first became a lawyer, I was representing Black Panthers, and they were part of a counterintelligence program of the FBI to neutralize and destroy the rise of Black liberation. And I was also very involved in the Puerto Rican independence movement, and they also were targeted by the FBI and the U.S. government to destroy their efforts to bring about a free and independent Puerto Rico. So this is not something new. The U.S. government, the FBI, has a plan and a program to disrupt and neutralize political activism. And particularly now, they want to destroy people who are trying to educate about Palestine and get support and open the eyes of the American people to what really is going on in Palestine. And when we were on trial in Detroit for Rasmea, and we wanted to show the jury that she was convicted by an illegal proceeding 45 years ago by a military court, and she was tortured, and that she was innocent of the charges that were brought against her because they said she lied when she filled out her form and said she had never been in prison or convicted. The judge said no, he wouldn't let us do that. He wouldn't let us show that she was innocent of the charges or that she had been tortured, nor that she even in fact suffered from post-traumatic stress as a result of what had happened to her. The judge refused to let in any evidence about Israel in the courtroom. He wouldn't even let us ask the jurors about whether or not they had any beliefs or opinions about the Israel-Palestine conflict. Because the U.S. courts do not want the truth about Israel's crimes to come out. They want to cover it up. They're part of the system to cover up the crimes of Israel. And don't ever think that if you have a trial and you want to raise, which is relevant to her case and many other cases, the crimes of the Israeli government, the fact that the secret police consistently torture people to get confessions, you'll be able to do it in a place where you're supposed to get justice. So as Rafeeq says, we shouldn't act with fear. but we should act with intelligence. We should know that the FBI and the government is watching our work. And as long as we protect ourselves and protect our work, then we will be okay. But we shouldn't forget that the FBI and the U.S. government does not want the crimes of Israel to be exposed in this country. And that's why Rasmea Odeh was convicted. She had a trial in which her defense was denied. She couldn't put on the relevant evidence. We weren't able to show that why she filled out the form the way she did. And we were not able to show that she is part of this community. And in fact, the judge said that he thought she was a risk of flight and took away her bond because she said she didn't have any immediate family in this area. She's been working here for 10 years. She is beloved by the community. When we went to court every day, there was 50 to 75 people who came to sit in her case and show their support. And yet the judge found that because she tried to escape from prison in Israel in 1975, she had no respect for law and order. So the struggle for justice for Palestinians in the U.S. courts is a very difficult one. We will continue to fight, and the people who are supporting them will continue to fight, and someday we will get real justice. Thank you.
And on that note, hopefully we will be getting real justice very, very soon. Next up, we have Khalil Meek, who is the co-founder of the Muslim Legal Fund of America, MLFA, where he serves as the current executive director. He also served as the president of the Islamic Association of Louisville, Flower Mound, from 2001 to 2007, and president of Council of American Islamic Relations, DFW chapter, from 2004 to 2007. So let's welcome Khalil Meek.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah, wa ala alayhi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum. Kayfa halik? Let's start by saying Alhamdulillah. Say Alhamdulillah for Allah giving us the beautiful religion of Islam, our families, all the blessings in our lives. Say Alhamdulillah. You know, today I'm asked to talk a little bit about this activism and fear and the Holy Land Foundation. But before I start, I just want to bring in the religious perspective to what we do, right? Allah says, "O you who believe, believe." That's it, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "O you who believe, believe." That should give you courage to do anything, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is on your side. Now, I don't mean anything wrong, but legal. But when we get into activism, when we get into fear, before I get into the Holy Land, I'm here to give you a legal update on the Holy Land Foundation and where it's heading. But before I do, I want to make a few comments. We've had many examples in this room of trying to chill activism, right? You have the case of Mohamed Soltan. Mohamed Soltan, I was just told, I asked him how many years did he go through? 9 years, right? But did he quit after the first year, the second year, the third year? What was the result? Alhamdulillah. Mohamed Soltan, not in jail, citizen, on with his life. Why? Because the community stood up. We have the case of Sami El-Arian, right? First test case, Patriot Act after 9/11. Persecuted and prosecuted for many years. From 2000, I think it was 2 almost, that he got indicted, until 2014. 12 years. But a judge in August of this year said that all charges against Sami have been dismissed. Alhamdulillah. So sometimes, and right now Rasmea Odeh, God bless her, she's going through a trial, the community stood up, it's not over. Right? Some famous quotes to inspire us, which I'm sure people here don't need the inspiration, but it's good to have it. And that is, some famous people have said certain things that resonate till the end of time. One of the presidents of the United States after Pearl Harbor said, all we have to fear is fear itself. So fear, like Rafeeq said, is good. But if you take that fear and move, use it, don't let it paralyze you, it can be good. Edmund Burke, in the 1700s, said, he's the modern founder of conservatism, said that all that is necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. Remember that. Remember that the only thing that's ever changed a condition is a small group of people whose voice got louder. In the Holy Land case, the Justice Department still considers it the largest successful prosecution in the war on terror since the inception. They say that they have saved this country from the most evil organization in our midst. Yet when we ask what evil we have been saved from, when we talk about the case of the Holy Land, we talk about the prosecution, they say that feeding children was their crime. The government said that the Holy Land was a charity that provided food, clothing, shelter, education, and medical supplies all over the world. They focused in Palestine. They said everything went to the needy. People who needed the charity got it. We said, okay, alhamdulillah, what's the problem? The government said, we believe that providing these charity through the zakat committees in Palestine, where they said they had a theory, the zakat committees might be under the influence of Hamas. And if that was true, when they delivered the aid to the Palestinians, it might be winning the hearts and minds of the Palestinians for the organization of Hamas. And that love and affection we consider to be material support. So they prosecuted humanitarians for caring about other people. The case went through a legal system that is riddled with not only injustice, but a political establishment I'm choosing my words carefully, that is colluding to keep it unjust. And when I say that, we have examples in many cases where they're using secret evidence, anonymous experts. They try everything out on the Muslims. The Palestinians even better. They decide that when you go to court, you can't talk about anything but what they want to talk about, especially in Rasmea's case. They want to limit the argument to something that is, in their mind, safe. They want to be able to do anything and everything they can to promote fear and continue that fear to politically mute activism. They do it in immigration, they do it in civil, they do it criminal. Any way they can, they want your voice not to be heard. Which means that your voice resonates, which is good news. The Holy Land case is in its last legal battle, but it's a good one. The Holy Land went all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court had novel issues that have never been brought before the court before to decide. where you had different courts arguing over how to proceed, the Supreme Court should step in and make a decision. They ignored it. They just said, no bill. So they denied the opportunity to listen. So the next step is called a habeas. The habeas is a civil suit where you sue the government for an unfair trial. You say that I didn't get a fair trial, and there's no judge who can tell you what you can and cannot say. You can write any argument you want in a habeas. The Holy Land case depends on one thing and one thing only. The theory, which is still unproven, but the theory that the Zakat committees might be under the influence of Hamas and they might have won the hearts and minds of Palestinians by feeding them. The heart of the case is yes or no, is the Zakat committee under the influence of Hamas? We have been able to secure 32 affidavits from the different Zakat committees during the time period of the indictment of the Holy Land, who are not afraid to say, we gave based on need, not creed. We were independent in our analysis of need, and we gave to anybody and everybody who needed it. We were not under the influence of Hamas, nor were any of the directors nor decisions made based upon any political politics. Those are sworn affidavits from members who were the board members of the Zakat committees during the time period of the indictment. There can't be a more relevant testimony to argue before the judge. These affidavits are now before the judge, and we're waiting to hear whether he thinks they're serious enough to call for a hearing and depositions and to have an argument over this as an unfair trial. We'll keep you posted once we hear from the judge on the status. The purpose of this gathering is for us to see what's going on. I don't think we have to, we're preaching to the choir, right? We know what we feel, we know what we see. We have examples in this room, so we don't have to describe a problem and hope somebody gets it. What we need is a solution, right? We have lawyers, we have activists, we have people who care, we have all this concern. So how do we take that and make a difference? How do we use our feelings and emotion and intelligence to change things? If I had, now you're all wanting the answer, right? which is I guess much more difficult than the question. But it boils down to one thing. All of us making a difference in our circle of influence. Right? It's not going to happen from Michael. It's not going to happen from the Muslim Legal Fund. It's not going to happen from Hatem. It's not going to happen from one of you or two of you. What it's going to take is all of us making a difference in the lives of the people who know us. Now, that's as simple as you can get. And I'm going to give you an example in closing to bring home the point I'm making. I travel around the country with many speakers. I talk about legal rights and justice and what's happening in the court. But I usually like to bring a speaker who comes with me to lift the iman, the spirit of the community, because it's a heavy message, right? Because I'm telling you how hard it is and how rough it is and everything going on. So we bring somebody who's become a Muslim, and they share their conversion or how they became a Muslim. Right now, I'm working with a man named Terry Holbrooks. Terry Holbrooks was a man in the U.S. Army. He was in the Army, and as a soldier, he was stationed in Guantanamo Bay. His job was to guard the prisoners. His job was to protect America. Now, in the most god-awful place on earth, for the temperature, the humidity, the smell, every reason on the earth, that was a horrible place to be stationed. And he was told that he was guarding the most dangerous people on earth. And they were all Muslim. And that they had done 9/11. And remember those families who had died. So he's programmed already to be fearful, to be on alert, to protect, to do everything that he can to keep us safe. And while guarding the prisoners, he becomes Muslim. Now, how can that happen? How in the world can somebody in that environment, in that intense environment, go from, he was agnostic at best, if not atheist, but agnostic, I believe, no religion, to saying, I want to be a Muslim while serving as a guard? And you know what it is? He said, the guards had all the freedom in the world. He said we could put in our 8 hours and we could go home, we could drink, party, smoke, anything we wanted to do. But we were miserable. We couldn't stand what we had to do every day. We couldn't wait to leave. We were living a life of hell as a guard. And he said the prisoners who were in cages 24/7, baking in the heat, getting privileges of taking a bath once a week, if they cooperated in every detail, getting to do nothing but just solitary confinement 24/7, would wake up each day. And he said they would smile at each other. And they would talk to each other. And they would pray with each other. And they would go about their lives, and they were happy. And he said, I could not understand this. He said, this is the most lopsided display of human character I've ever witnessed. And he thought to himself, what is making the difference between me and them? And he said, the only thing different is they're Muslim. So he started asking them, why do you do this? Why do you do that? Why do you do this? Why do you do that? What about this? What about that? And just them answering questions and going about their daily life. Nobody's a da'i, nobody's a sheikh, nobody's calling each other kafir, nobody's having a debate, pull out who's... None of that. He said, by witnessing Islam, seeing it practiced, the condition of people who have it made me want it. Which means anyone can change anyone else through their circle of influence. Just be you. Just be proud. Continue to speak truth to power. Continue to be active. The outcome is in the hands of Allah. We're all doing something. We want to do more. But we have to focus and not let the problem be bigger than us or smaller than us. It's all of ours. Thank you.
For that. So now from that, we're all going to take home a message. We can influence those in our little sphere around us. So everybody's resolution before the end of the year is to speak the truth about Palestine and about all of the cases that we're going to hear about today. So Rasmea's case, the case we're going to hear about later with Mohamed Soltan. Speak about that with your friends. Even if you think they know it, give them some more information about that and have them learn more about it and have them tell people who are going to tell people who are going to tell people. So next up we have Asma El-Ashi, who's the daughter of Holy Land Foundation political prisoner Ghassan El-Ashi. She currently works as a speech language pathologist in Dallas, Texas.
Okay, so actually Nida Abudayyeh was supposed to come, so it was kind of last minute. She's also the daughter of Holy Land Foundation defendant Shukri Abudayyeh, and she actually couldn't come last minute because she was visiting her dad. And I just want to share her story. She actually called me today and shared her story, and I think it's a great example, illustrates a great example of how systematically political prisoners get cruel and unusual punishment on a day-to-day basis. She went to visit her family with to visit her family all the way 5 hours away from Dallas, and usually they only allow 5 people, but she's been visiting her family. Her and her family are 5 with one of her sisters' 2-year-old son, And one day, or today, they just decided to change the rules, and the lieutenant came and said that we only allow 5 people. And so some arguments ended up happening, and basically Shukri Abubakkar said that it's either my whole family or none of my family. And so they all had to leave, and all they got was a hug. And so they, went all that way, and they couldn't visit their dad. So I think we should just have them in our dua, and may Allah unite them with their family, and let them all come home. So I'm the daughter of Hassan Ashi, and he was a co-founder of Holy Land Foundation, which was the largest Muslim charity. It's last year when it was shut down, it raised $13 million until the Bush administration shut it down in the wake of 9/11. And my dad received a prison sentence of 65 years for essentially feeding Palestinian widows and orphans. And I just want to share with you what he said the day he got sentenced as he addressed the judge and the persecutors, because it really gives light on who my father is. So he said these words. He said, "When the Holy Land Foundation was incorporated in 1989, I had no intention in my mind and in my heart but to help the Palestinian indigenous people who have been and still are facing unusual economic distress. Nothing in my life was as satisfactory and rewarding than knowing that I could sign a check, the evidence that is used against me. But that was the most enjoyable and rewarding part of my life. Knowing that I could sign a check or wire transfer to assist hundreds of Palestinian families who got displaced after their homes were demolished. Nothing was more satisfactory to me than granting scholarships to hundreds of Palestinian students who had high average grades despite the circumstances. And nothing was more rewarding to me than being a catalyst and turning the zakat into a real-life assistance to the orphans and needy families. We help Palestinian orphans and needy families, giving them hope and life. We gave them hope and life. We, at the Holy Land Foundation, provided them with basic essentials of life such as oil, rice, flour, and what was the occupation giving them? The occupation was providing them with death and destruction. And then we are turned criminals. This is irony. So, my dad is currently serving in Marion, Illinois, and in something called CMU, which everybody should know about. It's called the Communication Management Unit, which is actually also known as a little Guantanamo Bay. There's only 2 in the whole United States. And it's called this because it closely restricts their communication from the outside world. So it restricts their communication with their attorneys, the families, the media, and they get way less privileges than regular prisoners. So they only get 2 15-minute phone calls in a week, and we have to travel, because we live in Dallas, we have to travel 12 hours, 800 miles, just to visit him, and when we get there, it's behind a plexiglass wall. So we haven't been able to hug or touch my dad in the past 6 years. So now my dad has been serving for 8 years, and he keeps his sanity by memorizing the Quran. He's almost finished half of it, and by knowing tajweed, he reads up on politics, and he's never afraid to talk about Palestine, even in jail. He still sends me, says, I heard this on Democracy Now! Today, I read this article, search it on the internet and read it. So he still keeps our hearts attached to Palestine, even when he's in prison. And he is still very much incorporated in our lives, and he tries to be as active in our lives as sending us emails, trying to communicate with my mom about us, and it's my dad's generosity that motivated him to even open, be a co-founder of HLF and to become involved in many human rights projects. He stood in rallies with immigration, African Americans. So, and this kindness even extended while he's in prison. And even though he's deprived of the most basic needs, most of all his freedom, it wasn't hard for him to support me. Me personally, I'm just going to give you a personal example. While I was completing my graduate degree, my dad, and you know, as a college student, you are broke and you pretty much appreciate every cent you can get. My dad actually used to save money, and through working there and money he would get from extended family, and he would send me a check each month. And I would think, he's in prison, he's sending me money. Like, for me, I appreciated it so much, and it helped me, of course, but it really did inspire me that even there he's helping. And actually when I was graduated and I finished and I came home, I was able to save up money, of course, and now send him. And I said, Baba, it's my turn, I'm going to give back to you. And he said, you don't need to. But I said, anything that I can do to help you feel, you know, just to alleviate some of the discomfort and everything. And I asked him, what did you sacrifice for giving me that money? And he laughed, and he said, nothing, like I didn't have to. And I said, well, but tell me the truth. And he said, well, in prison there's commissary, and you can buy, quote unquote, he called luxuries, like tennis shoes, which he's been wanting because he's been wearing the same ones for 3 years and he works out a lot, or like honey, or these, you know, pricey things. So for me, you know, by giving back, I was like, at least now he can buy his tennis shoes, he can buy things there and feel a little bit more comfortable. So to me, I think this story just illustrates that, or inspires me and just teaches all of us that no matter what condition you are in, to always think about others, to be selfless, and to help in any way you can, whether it's emotionally, financially, to not only Palestinians, but people all over the world, Syria and Lebanon and everywhere. So just to conclude, I know that many of you know about the case, but anything can help. So if you guys can, you know, talk about this in your community to people that don't know, or when you travel, to just raise awareness and to talk about these stories and these cases. So you guys can, of course, learn more about it, and there's really good resources online, like freedomtogive.com, and also you can follow Instagram page called Free the Holy Land 5, or Free the HLF 5. And as we know, the Bush administration are making examples out of the HLF in the Dallas community to scare, you know, many community members, and they did the same thing in Chicago, and so they make examples out of all of us, and anyone can be next, especially with this material support law. So I think it's all of our responsibilities to just tell our stories, write letters to the prisoners. That really helps and shows the inmates that we're all behind them and we all support them. And also just make dua, because that is the greatest thing that we can do. Thank you.
We never should underestimate the power of dua, so if everybody can take a couple of seconds right now just to make dua for the Holy Land 5. Next up, we have Abrara Rageh, who is an American-Egyptian assistant scientist in ophthalmology at the University of Minnesota. She is socially and politically active locally, nationally, as well as internationally. Ms. Rageh has also led leadership positions in organizations including AMP, Minnesota, Session Middle East Egyptian Student Associations, Students for Justice in Palestine, as well as Muslim Student Associations, Multicultural Student Associations. She has also participated in the Model Arab League and was a panelist at the Nobel Peace Prize Forum. So let's welcome Abrara. Assalamu alaikum. I just want to know how many people here know about Mohamed Soltan. Okay, that's a good amount, inshallah. How many people in this room consider themselves hyphenated Americans? Okay, wow, 3 people. And How many people in here actually know that the charges, all charges against Mubarak, ex-President Mubarak, were dropped today? As humans, and simply as humans, we must recognize the inherent dignity and equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family. That is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. Mohamed is technically a hyphenated American, which is an American Egyptian or an Egyptian American, whatever you want to call it. As an American, though, his values for freedom, justice, human dignity, human rights have led him to participate in the January 25th revolution, have led him to stand up for rights of people all over the world, have led him to stand for rights of people in Egypt and in Palestine and whatnot. They've led him to go to Egypt and participate in the January 25th revolution, and from there to try to rebuild the country. As an Egyptian, Soltan represents the 40,000 Egyptians that are currently imprisoned with indefinite detentions, and that they're tortured and oppressed, and the negligence that is there. And because of what Mohamed Soltan is doing, we here are able to see and to witness the injustices that are happening over there. But most importantly, as a human, Mohamed has taught us strength, and he has taught us dignity, he has taught us resilience, and he showed us what it means when he said that if we have to die so the next generation can live free, then so be it. What Mohamed is doing right now is trying to send the message, and what we all as humans here and as Americans specifically need to do is stand up against the injustices and let everyone know about what's happening to Mohamed Soltan, an American citizen that's currently detained in Egypt for a very long time. And with no further ado, I would actually like to bring your attention to the video over here. Can everyone see it? Yeah. Oh, the screen. Can everyone see the screen? Okay. And just please pay attention to the video.
A war on terror. This is terror. You have peaceful protesters that only have is their voices and their bodies, and they're sitting at the other side of the barrel saying, we're gonna fight for this freedom, and you're gonna shoot at them? It takes a coward to pull the trigger. It's not how democracy works. You don't get to choose when you want to oust the president. You wait until the term is done. Actually, the January 25th revolution is supposed to be a democracy, it's supposed to be a free country. Where is this? Why is the military back? Why is the military still moving? Why is there a police state? Why are we shooting live ammunition at people while they're praying? Why? This is why we're here. We're here to say one message and one message only. We are pro-democracy.
Represents Egypt's future, its best and brightest, graduating from America's Ohio State University.
If we have to die so that the next generation can live freely, then so be it. I chose to go on a hunger strike, on an open-ended hunger strike, because I was brought up a free man. So my decision was to peacefully challenge and resist oppression entirely. That even if the Egyptian military is able to jail me and my own government insisting on abandoning me, I still control my own destiny. I still control my own fate. And that to me is what being free, and what being an American is all about. Mr. President, fellow Americans, fellow humanitarians, you may choose to ignore me, but my fear is that you won't be ignoring me. You will be ignoring your conscience. You will be, and above all, you will be ignoring the countless of other Americans who in the future will be neglected by their governments. Because this sets a precedent. This sets a precedent for the plight of the hyphenated American to be ignored completely. After a sniper bullet barely missing my head, and another striking my arm,
my illegal and unjust arrest based on political grounds, and a traumatizing experience with surgery in my own cell, I know now more than ever that freedom isn't free. It isn't cheap at all. If I have to pay the price with my life, then I do it for God and country. Mohamed Soltan.
Our beds have to be moved this way. I don't understand why 3 different people sleep in this room. Now, this is the kitchen and the bathroom. This is an electric heater, and there's all kinds of bugs and insects down here. The food obviously is uncovered, and as you can see here, there's this is something very raw, just a little blanket, so that they can basically use the bathroom, have a little bit of privacy. This is the bathroom, it's a hole in the ground.
I hereby call for Mohamed to get full and adequate medical care immediately and for his immediate release. Thank you. Member of Congress, Quito.
His body is reaching its limits, and though his determination knows no limits, the responsibility falls upon you to ensure that this hero walks free. Sultan stands for freedom. What do you stand for? Free Sultan.
With that, I would like to ask everyone to please like the page for Free Sultan. It's facebook.com/Free Sultan, or also the Twitter page at @free_Sultan. And the least you can do is spread the message. The least you can do is let others know. And just FYI, there is a workshop specifically about the Mohamed Soltan case at 5:30 in this room.
Last up, we have Omar Soltan, who is actually the brother of Mohamed. Last up, we have
Omar Soltan, who is the brother of the longest hunger striker in Egyptian history, Mohamed Soltan, and he has been a witness to multiple military massacres in Egypt. Mr. Soltan participated in the Egyptian Revolution and the Raqqa Square protests following the Egyptian coup. He was injured during the massacre of Ramses, and he's also led the Save Mohamed Soltan Committee, which has been seeking his brother's liberty. So if we can all join in welcoming him.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My brother Mohammed, as Gaza, and for Egyptian imprisoned and non-imprisoned revolutionaries, has become a symbol of persistence, steadfastness, a symbol of resistance from within the prisons of illegitimate military Egyptian government that fears young youth like Mohammed, educated, motivated, and seeking change. A regime that declares Hosni Mubarak and his aides innocent on all charges as we've seen today, but continue to hold and arrest young women and men like Mohammed. Mohammed was born in Egypt and raised here in the United States. Mohammed, like many of us, who live here in the middle of the luxury of freedom of speech, civil liberties, who go back home to our countries and say, why not there too? Why can't my Egyptian, Libyan, Tunisian, Palestinian, Syrian, and all Arabian and Muslim identities be as free as my American? Why can't my fellow men and women live the same freedoms as I do? So in pursuit of that belief that all men are created equal, that all men are created free, Mohamed joined active groups on campus here in the United States, joined humanitarian convoys and went to Gaza twice. He even volunteered for the Obama campaign twice in Ohio, which was a swing state. His belief that spreading those ideals saw no boundaries. After the coup in Egypt, and as Mohamed was picked up and arrested on August 25th, which is 461 days today, for no other reason besides the fact that his dad was a known figure that opposed the military regime. And even after my father was arrested, 2 weeks after Mohamed continues to be held in Egyptian prisons. On January 26, 2014, and after the prosecutor's office came up with no evidence incriminating Mohamed, and the judge decided to keep holding Mohamed in prison, he went on a hunger strike. Continuing over 307 days of hunger strike, losing more than 150 pounds, and nearly facing death twice and torture multiple times. Mohamed has very strongly and patiently taken on a whole regime on his own. But what many don't know is that we have been raised by our father. Mohamed has been raised as a child that Palestine was always the end. No matter what happened, Palestine always stayed an eye's distance, never forgetting about it. In one of Mohamed's letters during the most recent war on Gaza, and after one of his friends called him a hero, Mohamed said, and I quote, "For over 6 decades, Palestinians have led by example. They taught all free men and women of this world that oppression must be resisted. From a young age, they instilled in their children that the sweetness of freedom is worth sacrificing everything for. That you can never be too small to make a change. That by resisting, you become part of the equation. You become a reality, rather than just accepting and conforming to the status quo. They taught us that resistance is the language of freedom, which can only be achieved through sacrifice. They taught us that resistance is an independent interim ideology that's not directly correlated with religion or ethnicity. It unites behind it those who are oppressed and those seeking freedom. It dissolves differences, puts aside all ideologies in order to achieve its one goal, to liberate from oppression, to be free. And as Mohamed has been to Gaza twice, an experience that changed his life, his defiance stems from the city of Gaza, his patience from Hayy al-Shuja'iyya, his resistance from Hayy al-Zaytun, his steadfastness from Beit Hanun. Mohamed is Gaza, and Gaza is Mohamed. In strength and weakness, they are both victorious and will be, and will continue to be until Mohamed is free, until Egypt is free, until Syria is free, until Dafa and Al-Quds and Gaza are all free, until all the occupied territories are free, inshallah, because Gaza teaches life. قل هل تربصون بنا إلا إحدى الحسنيين ونحن نتربص بكم أن يصيبكم الله بعذاب من عنده أو بأيدينا فتربصوا إنا معكم متربصون فتربصوا إنا معكم متربصون فتربصوا إنا معكم متربصون والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
I guess that was the best way to end the lecture. Thank you very much for that, Omar. I would like to remind you of 2 workshops that are happening in the next 15 minutes. One for the Free Sultan campaign, which will actually be held in International ENF right here, and the one for Rasmea Odeh, which will be held across the hall in International Aid. And on a final note, we have a bonus session with Dr. Mustafa al-Barghouthi happening in this room, inshallah, at 7:15, and it will be a PowerPoint presentation that he put together himself from his time in Gaza. So I hope to see you all there, and I hope you guys are enjoying your last day at the 7th Annual AMP Convention. Thank you very much for attending.